The conflict between Sabalenka and Eala escalates into a major scandal that was captured on tape. What started off as a standard match turned into one of the most thrilling moments in women's tennis history. Tension abruptly escalated into open turmoil after a disputed call and a stare over the net. From the umpire's chair came whispers. A conflict no one anticipated. As two worlds, power and burgeoning promise, collided beneath the limelight, crowds held their breath. Every feeling was amplified, and every moment was filled with tension. And everything changed after the game when the video emerged. The rivalry turned into a controversy that the sport will never forget, and reputations were called into question. Instead of being the match that everyone feared, it was meant to be the one that everyone looked forward to. Aryna Sabalenka exuded the presence of a champion who had experienced every kind of pressure, limelight, and expectation when she took the court. Eala stood across the net. She was younger, more reserved, and unknown to many outside of her area, but she possessed a fire that had propelled her to greater heights than anybody had anticipated. Two entirely distinct routes, two entirely distinct energies. However, something felt dangerously unstable as soon as they faced each other, as if the atmosphere was too heavy for a straightforward tennis match. You could sense the difference just from the warm-up. With her powerful strokes, Sabalenka sent balls that reverberated like tiny explosions. Eala moved with almost surgical precision, as though she was examining every angle, bounce, and vibration of the court beneath her. She held Sabalenka in high regard. Everyone was aware of that. However, there was a communication gap between them. Something that was non-existent a week ago. The dressing room was filled with whispers. Rumors on alleged remarks made by Sabalenka. Eala's camp's responses were muted. The young Filipino star wasn't prepared for the mental strain that a player like Sabalenka entails, according to journalists. The stress increased with each headline. Between them was another invisible brick. Nevertheless, their smiles appeared almost genuine when they shook hands before the game at the net. Nearly. There was a certain type of excitement throughout the stadium. Fans anticipated grit, firepower, and possibly even drama, but nobody anticipated what was about to happen. Not Sabalenka herself, not the commentators, not the chair umpire. Because something was crumbling behind her tough exterior. And something was stirring behind Eala's serene gaze. It was evident from the start of the first game that this was not your average match. Each point was significant. Every gathering seemed to have a message. Heavy and determined, Sabalenka's ground strokes nearly dared Eala to collapse under them. However, Eala did more than just endure. She responded immediately, matching Sabalenka's speed with a level of control that seemed unattainable for someone her age. The first spark appeared on the court at that point. A ball that landed millimeters from the line was a near miss. Eala was awarded a point by the umpire. Sabalenka became motionless. Her chest lifted. Her jaw clenched. She looked first at the mark, then at the umpire, and last at Eala, who did not blink, react, or rejoice. Ready for the following point, she just strolled back to the baseline. Sabalenka was more enraged by Eala's calm and stillness than by any rejoicing. After that, the tension rapidly increased. Sensing the change, fans leaned forward. There was a real thing going on. Something uncooked. It was more than just a match. Pride, pressure, and unsaid thoughts collided and eventually came to the surface. And by the time the first set was over, everyone in the arena had the same question on their minds. Was the line always there, ready to burn, or had this match just crossed it? The turning point did not come with a bang. It came in a whisper. One trade, 1 point. Suddenly, the game was on the verge of something much more significant than tennis. Sabalenka gave a wide serving. Stretching, Eala delivered a looping forehand that dropped perilously near the sideline. The audience let out a gasp. After a half-heartbeat of hesitation, the line umpire called it in. Point Eala. However, Sabalenka was not aware of the call. Not at all. She heard something more profound. The shiver of worry that the match was disappearing more quickly than she had anticipated, the sting of doubt. Her eyes grew wide. She let her racket fall to her side. She moved in the direction of the target, shaking her head as though she couldn't understand what reality had just thrown at her. No way, she mumbled, her voice cutting through the din of the stadium. The umpire in the chair leaned forward. That should have been the end of it. The call stands. Please continue. There was a quarrel, a gesture, a return to the baseline, but at that point, Sabalenka wasn't Sabalenka. She was searching for thunder like a hurricane. Palms out, her face tense with incredulity, she walked over to the umpire's chair. "How is that in? You didn't even check it," she remarked in a calm but heated voice. The kind of control that merely feeds the fire underneath. The cameras enlarged. The audience became silent. Eala's heart pounded through her fingertips as she stood immobile at the baseline, holding onto her racket. She was in the center of it, all even though she wasn't involved. Sabalenka gestured to Eala. "Every time this occurs, she wins every close call." Like a spark hitting dry grass, the words landed on the court. The stands echoed with gasps. Eala's jaw tightened slightly, but her expression remained unchanged. Music, a reaction, but not one for the cameras. The umpire tried to defuse the situation. "Please come back to play, Aryna." Sabalenka, however, was not giving up. "This is absurd. Tell me right now if this is going to be the case." Then came the moment that, in a matter of hours, would repeatedly appear on social media. Sabalenka faced the baseline once more. However, she muttered something loud enough for the courtside microphones to pick up and the cameras to focus on before turning to go. "If she wants to win like this, let her." Eala jerked her head up. The audience responded right away. That was the actual start. Because everyone who was watching heard those 8 words, calm, sharp, and delivered like a sentence. Music. Eala's composure was broken by emotion for the first time during the match. Nor fear, nor rage. Something sharp, something in between, something she was no longer able to swallow. She was only a few steps away from Sabalenka as she made her way to the net. Her voice was quiet but calm as she asked, "You think I need help to beat you?" The stadium burst into flames. Officially, the nature of the match had changed. And nothing at all would be the same after that. The controversy didn't wait for the outcome. It started in real time on the court, overflowing over the lines of professional sportsmanship and landing squarely in the middle of a scandal from which neither player could escape. When the tide turned in Eala's favor, Sabalenka's annoyance turned into something more intense and erratic, which the cameras captured from every angle. It began with a miss, a standard backhand that Sabalenka typically crushed without giving it any thought. However, her timing was off this time. After clipping the net, the ball returned to her side. After a brief moment of freezing, she used a single swing to destroy her racket. Like a gunshot, the crack reverberated across the arena. The umpire winced. The audience gasped. Eala tried not to reveal how terrified she was as she looked down. With the aggressiveness of someone struggling with her own feelings, Sabalenka stomped to her bench and grabbed a new racket. However, something else was captured by the cameras. Something that would make headlines even before the game was over. The microphone caught it up as she scowled across the net and murmured, "This is a joke. They're gifting her everything." It was heard by the commentators. The stadium responded with a mixture of amazement, rage, and disbelief in a matter of seconds. She didn't respond, Eala. Everyone could see her hands shaking when she took a sip of water, even if it wasn't visible. Not pressure, panic, adrenaline, and a storm all at once. The suspense permeated everything as play commenced. Every call turned into a battleground. Sabalenka once laughed sarcastically when Eala received another close call. "Oh wow, another miracle for her," she exclaimed as she turned to face the umpire. The audience jeered, "Keep going. Why not?" Sabalenka gestured to them. With her shoulders taut and her eyes down, Eala approached the baseline and said, "Yeah, go ahead. Boo like you know anything." The stadium erupted when, in an unexpected moment, she looked up and urged Sabalenka, "Stop blaming everyone else." It was like fuel hitting an open flame in that one statement. With amazement and disbelief mixed together, Sabalenka moved forward and fixed her gaze on Eala. "You don't talk to me like that," she yelled. But this time, Eala refused to back down. The umpire called them both to refocus right away, saying, "I'm just here to play. If you have a problem, deal with it." However, the harm had already been done. The threshold had been crossed by the match. Points and sets were no longer relevant. This has to do with identification, pride, and ego. The emotional repercussions was finished by the last changeover. Sabalenka sat with her racket in her hands as if it were her anchor. Eala tried to ignore the sounds by sitting with her eyes closed and taking deep breaths. The match had become personal, the pundits muttered. The audience felt history, messy, dramatic, and unforgettable history, taking place in front of them. Because everyone who was watching realized something at that precise time. They didn't anticipate this rivalry. They would never forget this scandal. The world finally stopped long enough to pose the question that lurked beneath every rally, every look, and every whispered remark, even if the match was raging with emotion. This was the true turning point. What was true in this case? Because scandals don't just happen. They arise from the collision of people's beliefs, perceptions, and perceptions of what they have seen. Both Sabalenka and Eala were carrying more than the burden of a tennis match when they started the next game. They were carrying stories that were discussed endlessly online, yelled from the fans, and whispered in locker rooms. And now, in real time, the reality about who they really were was emerging beneath the limelight. Eala, who had always been the reserved, respectful person who dropped her head after both victories and defeats, was now thrust into a role she had never requested, that of the fighter. Not against Sabalenka's authority, but rather against Sabalenka's statements and claims that her success was due to favoritism, luck, and umpire gifts. It wasn't merely false. I had struggled for everything in silence for years, so it stung worse than anyone could have imagined. Conversely, Sabalenka, who was often bold and unwavering, was collapsing due to something she didn't want to acknowledge. Unease. Fear of losing control, not fear of losing the game. Fear of seeing someone younger, more composed, and surprisingly unaffected by the mayhem Sabalenka herself had caused take center stage. Fear of being taken over. At this point, the truth started to come to light. She hesitated for a second when I offered to serve. To breathe, not to stall, not to provoke. To put herself in the center. Then she did what no one had anticipated. Throughout her career, she played the cleanest, sharpest game. For points, for winners, a hold on love, no joy, no shouting, just concentration. Sabalenka did not argue, complain, or react for the first time during the entire match. She simply gazed at the floor while applying little pressure to her forehead with the racket's handle, as though she required it to prevent a complete crack. First of all, Eala wasn't winning by chance. Because she earned it, she was succeeding. Second, Sabalenka wasn't upset with Eala. She was upset with herself. The stadium was aware of it. It was caught by the cameras. No words could express it as clearly as the stillness. Sabalenka eventually let out a lengthy, trembling breath when she got back to the baseline, displaying more sensitivity than she had throughout the season. Eala witnessed it. For the first time, she perceived Sabalenka as a person crumbling beneath her own expectations rather than as a force or a threat. Then an unforeseen event occurred. Sabalenka whispered in between points, just loud enough for Eala to hear. "I didn't intend for it to get this far." Eala remained silent. She was not required to. Between them, the truth was becoming apparent. Painful, raw, and indisputable. Because the animosity subsided, the scandal stopped, and both players' humanity finally came to light at that very moment. Favoritism was not the issue here. It has nothing to do with luck. This had nothing to do with hostility. One player was being broken by pressure, and another was being forged. The match between Sabalenka and Eala came to an end when the final point was played, the last ball hit the line, and the stadium exploded in a mixture of shock and weary relief. However, the consequences, significance, and legacy of what had transpired remained in the air like smoke after a wildfire. The scoreline lost its significance. The globe saw more than simply a match, so the winner was practically incidental. It was a turning point that divided careers into before and after. Despite the mayhem, Eala approached the net with the same calm demeanor that she had maintained since the first point. Her breath was steady, her demeanor bland, and her hand was outstretched. However, it was evident to all that she was a different player from the one who had entered the court 2 hours prior. Something significant had altered. She had persevered through the storm. Without flinching, she had faced down the loudest and largest force on the court. Sabalenka came slowly, her shoulders low and her steps heavy, as though the afternoon's weight was seeping into her bones. The shake of their hands was fleeting, almost brittle. They didn't say anything. It wasn't necessary. Weary, shaken, and human, their eyes spoke for them. Naturally, the cameras quickly zoomed in. Tension, pride, and the quiet electricity between them were all discussed in whispers by commentators. However, the reality was both simpler and much more intricate. A hero and a villain were not produced by this duel. There were no emotional winners or losers as a result. What it did was expose the fragile, unpredictable humanity behind elite sport. To deafening ovation from her supporters, her nation, and everyone who had witnessed her withstand every emotional blow, Eala left the court. She became more than just a budding star. She became a symbol, a reminder that power doesn't necessarily appear as fire, that humility is not capitulation, and that composure is not weakness. Silence might appear to be maintained with dignity at times. Conversely, Sabalenka departed via a tunnel full with inquiries, with voices and cameras pursuing her. Was she acting inappropriately? Was she feeling overburdened? Was she misinterpreted? She didn't respond because she didn't fully understand the response, not because she was dismissive. Perhaps that's what the world saw at last. A human moment from someone who was typically larger than life, a champion breaking under duress. The narratives had already taken shape by the time of the press conferences. It was referred to as a controversy in headlines. Fans argued over who was right, who was wrong, and who went too far. Videos became viral. The words, the outburst, the quiet, the stare-downs. However, something more profound occurred behind all the commotion. Tennis acquired a rivalry it was unaware it needed. It is based on truth rather than animosity or disrespect. The unpleasant, indisputable reality that people are exposed by pressure. Additionally, the world isn't always prepared for what it witnesses. Kids imitated Eala's poise in the weeks that followed. Sabalenka's emotions were analyzed by analysts, and the match went down in history as one of the sport's most memorable personality clashes in recent memory. One question persisted as fans repeatedly watched the video. Was this the height of a competition or the beginning of something greater? Ultimately, there were no winners or losers in this scandal. It was about the collision of two strong forces. Pressure and promise, ego and assent. Silence and fire. If anything, this match demonstrated that tennis is more than simply a sport. The world is unable to look away from this emotional battleground. The next story is already unfolding, so be sure to subscribe if you want more compelling tennis rivalries, unseen tales, and behind-the-scenes drama.